Imagine we just did this the whole time. So I talked to Dorian, and she's the brains behind the operation. So hopefully Dorian figured it out. I was just like pressing buttons. I'm not very technical. Sorry. But cool. Okay, let's see. And even if we're just gonna move forward with this, regardless if it works this time or not. I just wanted to make sure all the panelists could get in one way or the other. And yay, Dorian's a genius. Dorian's a genius. Okay, good. So Dorian did it. Sorry, everybody, for the back and forth. I just wanted to make sure at least all the panelists got in, and also anybody who was trying to come in, later could make it. Okay, cool. So thanks again for your patience with this. For anybody coming in, we just started a little late because we all know Dorian's a genius. Absolutely. We had our original Zoom could only fit 100 people, and now we're over 100 and growing. So we just wanted to upgrade to make sure everybody gets in. That we can. So cool. So I'm Joey from Roadmap Writers. You probably get a lot of annoying emails from me throughout the day, but we wanted to do something special because we're getting so many questions. And actually, Chris Deckard and Dan Seco that are on right now, they both reached out to me and said you should do something about like the state of the industry, which I thought was a very, very good idea because there's so much craziness going on right now. Obviously just up with the industry and just in the world overall, obviously. So we really wanted to do this to help answer your questions from a manager perspective, an executive perspective, and from a lawyer's perspective. One of our lawyers, Shep Rosenman, is on here, hopefully. And he also created a really cool handout for everybody that was so thoughtful, and it goes over how to file for unemployment benefits. It talks about the Netflix's $100 million fund that they did, and are you eligible? So if you want that, please email me at joey@roadmapwriters.com, and I will email it to you privately. It doesn't have to be private, but I just want to send it to everybody so you have like a hard copy for it. So it's joey@roadmapwriters.com, and I will email it to you if you want. It has a lot of great information about how to get benefits, again, about the $100 million fund that Netflix did. So yeah, one thing before I bring the panelist in, it was kind of fate that one of the last emails I got before I started this webinar, the first time, not the third time, was that it was a manager that said that they're looking to sign 5 writers during the break. I am getting flooded. My inbox is overflowing with emails from execs and managers and producers being like, I have time. All I'm doing is reading. Send me stuff. Who do you have? I'm looking to sign. I have time now. This is a rare time, and the execs could talk about it more, where a lot of execs have ample time to vet writers. So that was literally the last email I got before I jumped into this, and I thought it was very, it was destiny that I got that to kind of segue into this. And hopefully this will appease some of your, concerns, answer some questions, maybe try to figure out how to use this to kind of help with your own writer's block or creativity, and stuff like that. But let's jump in. So I'm going to introduce each panelist one by one. First, we have Chris Deckard. So Chris, I'll promote you to panelist. And then once the panelists come in, I'll just have each of you do a quick a quick intro about yourself so we could learn a little bit more about you. Look, Chris, look at that throne that you're sitting in. I love it. That is a throne. I'm looking at my chair. I'm like, this is a rinky-dink chair. And then, yeah. It's Dorian, you're on. It is recording. Dorian literally is the brains of this operation. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what I would do. Hey, Dan, good to see you. And Janet's on too. Awesome. And Shep is good. Awesome. Shep is on too. So great. So let's see. Shep should be on in a moment. Let me just see if okay. So why don't we go around the room and just do a quick hello. I'm sure a lot of the writers on here are familiar with these lovely people because they do so much with us. So we'll do ladies first. Janet, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, then we'll just go around the room.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Janet. Hi, panelists. Joey, good to see you. All the writers, good to virtually feel that you're out there somewhere. I'm Janet Jeffries. I work with Lawrence Bender and Kevin Brown, who are film and television producers. We're a small company. So for us, we do film and television. A lot of stuff is we are doing is independent. With this coronavirus, it affected us with our film, which we were going to start this past Monday. And it stars Idris Elba, who got tested positive while he was on location just as they were going through the final prep days. So that's a little nerve-wracking. So far, there's just, you know, everybody seems to be fine. And my boss, Lawrence, had left just prior. So there wasn't a cross of paths, but still nerve-wracking to say the least. So for us, as far as, I sort of forgot all the questions already, Joey, sorry, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm reading a lot still. I have a couple of virtual meetings and phone calls that I'm having with people that have reached out saying, hey, if you're doing that, do it. And I said, yeah, sure I am. I'm reading
We'll go into those questions in a bit, actually. Yeah. So,
okay, sorry.
Well, that's so cool.
So film and TV, yeah, I know, the Idris Elba thing. I mean, seriously, crazy. And our writer's room for Roswell, they were here in LA, but there had been talk that maybe they were going to go out there, but they didn't. So thankfully, all that was navigated away from that. But yeah, so yeah, a brush with it, but luckily no contact. And all those. I know. Crazy.
Awesome. Thanks, Janet. And also, too, for anybody who's not familiar with Zoom webinar function, so there's a chat box where some people are already typing in, and there's a Q&A box. Feel free to type in the chat box if you want. We won't really be looking at that. But when it's time for questions, you can start typing in the Q&A box, because that's when I'm going to start asking the questions. So you don't have to do it now. Maybe just listen a little bit to see if your question is answered in the conversation we have. But when it's time to questions, I will give you the green light to start asking the questions. So cool. And now let's go to Dan.
Hey guys, I'm Dan Seco. I'm a literary manager at Schemers Entertainment. My background, I was a sports journalist before I got to Hollywood. I used to cover US soccer, Major League Baseball, the NBA. I moved to LA 7 years ago after beating cancer. I guess most notably, I've worked at Resolution, Writ Large, and Netflix before CIA, I guess. And I joined Schemers summer of 2018, where I run the management side.
Cool. Love it. Thanks, Dan. And Chris Deckard. Oh, Chris, you just want to unmute yourself. Here, I just muted you.
I'm Chris Deckard. I'm a manager. I have my own management company with a business partner. It's called Fictional Entity. We have been in business for over 3 years now as a company. And prior to that, I was at ICM for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was at WME for over 2 years. And then before that, I was working in law. So that's kind of my trajectory. And I've seen a lot of things change over the past, I mean, it's almost been 11 years now. In June, it'll be 11 years that I've been out here doing this stuff. And I've just seen all sorts of things change. This is yet another change that I'm looking forward to us being able to kind of work our way through, and looking forward to having that discussion about how we can do that with everybody here tonight.
Oh, that was already so reassuring. I'm going to call you at like 3 o'clock in the morning every night and be like, I'm scared. Reassure me. And speaking of reassurance, we have Shep Rosenman here, who's an amazing lawyer, who's been really great to Roadmap and to our writers. And Shep, also, his brother is Howard Rosenman, who some of you know. He's done some classes with us. And Howard produced Call Me By Your Name, amongst decades of amazing films, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Family Man, etc. But Shep, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been practicing law for longer than I'm prepared to admit publicly, though if you look up my record, it's about 30 years. All we do is entertainment transactions, actors, writers, directors, authors, producers. That's it. And we work in all media, live, unscripted, animation, new media, video games, kind of anything you throw at us that involves entertainment.
I love it. I can't imagine being a lawyer. It would be literally be so stressful for me. Could you imagine me being a lawyer? I would lose my mind in 20 seconds. Cool. So what I'll do is I'll actually unmute all of you now. So then we could kind of just call out when you want to answer a question. And we're just going to go around. And so I have about 5 or 6 questions I'm going to ask everybody. We might go on like a little bit of a tangent in some of them. But then afterwards, I'll give you guys, everybody that's listening, a couple of questions notice of when it's going to open up to your Q&A, so you can start typing in your question. So Janet, this kind of segues into our first question about how your film with Idris Elba is halted for now. But let's cover what's actually closed. Production is obviously closed, but are you all still taking meetings? Or are you just reading right now? Or are you still doing virtual meetings? I would love just to know like your day-to-day of still how you're running your business.
Well, as I sort of jumped again and was saying, yeah, I'm still doing virtual meetings or phone calls. Certainly trying to do that with the Roadmap family of writers as well, and just sort of reaching out to people and firstly checking in and hoping for the best and healthy, happy people, but just seeing what everybody is up to, what they're doing, if they're doing the same thing I am, and if there's something that, if they've read, just sort of trying to continue the sharing of information, because we're all in it together and we're all stuck together. So yeah, I'm very much doing that. And I was just back and forth on a text chain with the director who's doing a pass at our script. So there's some rewriting going on with other of our projects as well. So trying to keep a little touchstone on a little bit of everything.
Cool. Awesome. Great. And from the gentleman.
So I made the decision maybe March 6th that things were probably going to have to change. I was walking out of a lunch meeting and I saw that South by had been canceled, and I really stopped and thought, and I was like, okay. And that Sunday, I decided that we were going to close the office and start to work from home. So definitely a little bit on the earlier side. We have a team of interns that were coming from different colleges, some living in dorms because their schools were doing like a semester in LA kind of program. So we had some days where they were working from home anyway. They showed that they could do their work. So just was kind of taking an early precaution. So I'm on like, I don't know, day 11 of working from home. I would say this, a lot of it has been about checking in on clients, seeing how they're doing on a human level, checking the status on projects that were kind of on the path towards, moving forward. A few projects have kind of been put on hold for now. But it was really about, really focusing on projects that clients were supposed to deliver something by the end of the month, making sure that it was business as usual, just giving them all the resources they need to kind of be successful, meet their deadlines, and just kind of, continue on and progress, be it as a writer, as a director, whatever that may look like. I think I've kind of taken on more of a sounding board for some of my clients than I normally would. But it's good. I think I'm getting to know some of my clients on a deeper level, which I think is really kind of refreshing. Sometimes you don't take that time to do that. But we're still kind of in a wait and see period with a lot of things. So I think it's on a take it day by day basis without really getting too far ahead of ourselves.
And I guess Dan and Chris, just I'm curious from a manager's point of view, have you seen a difference in execs being able to receive material? Do you feel like there's more time? Do you feel like they're more open to it, less time?
Yeah. So, for my part, I'll just interject a little bit in here because I also want to address a little bit of what you'd asked also in the question that you'd had before too. Like what is actually closing down here? Like, obviously we've talked about productions closing down. So that means, no film, no television series are being shot, not just in the US, we're talking around the world here. And it's not just because a country has decided to shut something down, or we can't have people, a certain amount of people congregating, I really think a lot of it is also going to have to do with insurance. As boring as that may sound, like it's going to be very difficult to keep your insurance kind of in place when we've got this global pandemic going and you've got a production that's like keeping people on set. So that's gonna continue for a little bit of time for sure. This has led to, obviously, as we've talked about, a lot of people working from home. I know it's rather new for some people, but I've been in business now for over 3 years. So I'm working on maybe like, it's over 1,000 days I'm used to working from home. So, it's not that big of a shift for me. This is interrupting, I think, a little bit of how a number of other companies around town are operating. Definitely last week, when a lot of people were just getting used to what does it mean to work from home? What does it mean to have your kids there? I'll be honest, I was not calling executives to bug them the first couple days of that week, because they need to get all their stuff in order. They need to figure out how they're going to wind a lot of things down, how they're going to handle what it's like I said, working from home. So now that we've gotten a little back into, people kind of figuring out the rhythms, I think now it is the time where people are going to be a lot more open to taking a look at things. There definitely were people saying, hey, send me stuff. I don't have, that much to do. But a lot of people actually were kind of busy last week trying to figure out this sort of new normal. So yes, like Dan, I also have taken this past week or so to check in with every one of my clients, basically. There's still a couple people trying to pin down to kind of be able to talk to them, because a lot of people are busy. But it is a good time to reconnect with the people that you work with, to reconnect with, like, if you're a writer, I would say too, like, reconnect with your writing partners or the people that you kind of share scripts with and things like that. So I've been doing that. And to be honest, things have not quite slowed down for me. I know a lot of people are talking about how, there's a lot more time on hand. I'm still pretty busy. We did have a couple things, I'll say, shut down. Like, there was a movie and a television pilot that we were on like the 5th yard line to getting deals finished. And one of them was going to go into production within a week. The other was going to go into production in a month. Obviously that's been put on hold. I don't know when that's coming back, but there is a lot that can be done right now. People are reading. I think it will be a little difficult. I will say, like, I know we don't have an agent on this panel, so I don't mean to speak for agencies, but I think we would be, we're being dishonest, or we're not really covering the whole field, though, if we're not acknowledging that the agencies are in a little bit of turmoil right now, as are some of the other bigger like studios and companies, with a lot of things that have been shutting down. That does not mean that anyone should freak out, though. There are a lot of other people reading. So I sorry, you had mentioned we might go off on some little tangents. I'm pretty notorious for going off on tangents. So
no, I love it.
Bring me back in if I do keep going in the wrong direction.
No. It's all great information. That's good. And then Shep, from your point of view, I'm curious how you see everything now and how you're still moving forward.
Things are definitely no longer business as usual, but at the same time, it's business as usual. Most of the work as a lawyer is reviewing emails and getting on phone calls and reviewing documents. None of that has changed, except that the content has changed a little bit. We have clients whose pilots or productions have been pushed. We have yet to receive a force majeure notice on the production side. So for those of you who don't know what a force majeure notice is, force majeure means an act that's out of human control, like the coronavirus. And studios will often send that out when something terrible happens. There's an earthquake or a coronavirus. But on the production side, we haven't received that. There's just been this kind of informal pushing of productions. We have received force majeure notices on the rights side. So when you option a script or a book or something else to a studio, the studios sought to kind of stop the clock, as it were, so that they don't lose any time, because whether one studio said that they just don't know how to make payments with everybody working remotely. Another studio said, we just don't know what we're doing yet, so we're stopping the clock. But those are the only things that we've received that kind of shows signs of things slowing down on a formal legal level.
And I guess like knowing about the force majeure, how long, I mean, is it like indefinite? Is it a month? Is it like even stated in these contracts?
It's a good question, and the answer is it depends. Like most things in legal situations, some of that depends on what's in the form agreement, and some of that depends on what's negotiated. So in rights deals, there's usually a limitation on force majeures that's shorter than the limitation that goes for actor agreements. So, and again, there's no kind of hard and fast rule here, but on a rights deal, your force majeure might be capped at a month or 3 months, but on an actor agreement, it might be capped at 3 months to 6 months.
Okay, that's interesting. Oh my God, I just want this to be over. I'm like, my next question, when will this be over?
Joey, I would say,
go on.
There's a way to look at this too. Like this extra time is also a gift for a lot of people. You know, like I know we all want this. I don't want this to last any longer than necessary. But I've been encouraging my clients in particular to like now all this rush that we would feel all the time for so many things. Now you do finally get to, complete that thing you were working on. Now we do finally get to, reconnect about these things that have to keep getting pushed off. Like there are multiple ways to look at any situation that comes. And can I just remind everyone that about a year ago, we had a panel about how the entire industry was going to possibly fall apart because of the WGA ATA thing. And did it fall apart? Did it? Did people stop signing writers? Did like everything go to hell? It doesn't seem like it did, Like this is qualitatively different for sure, but there are multiple ways to look at this situation that we have here, and let's look at it opportunistically maybe,
Yeah, I love that.
Joey, before you jump to the next question, I just want to make one point. You had sent us the questions that you're going through over the weekend, and I definitely had some thoughts at that point. And I didn't know what today would bring in terms of how it would feel, in the sense that last week was definitely different. It seemed like things were kind of up in the air. There was definitely more negative than positive, a lot of uncertainty, some fear, some trepidation. Today has felt a little bit closer to normal. I feel a little bit better. My emails are up, my phone calls are up. I made a couple submissions. People are eager to read things. I'm hopeful. And I don't know if I felt that way even yesterday.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think we're adapting into this new norm. And I'm just curious, this is my first tangential question. This goes for everybody. How has this changed you? I know this is all relatively new, but has this changed you at all in terms of like digesting scripts? Kind of maybe even your mandate, maybe even how you give advice to clients? Has this changed you at all as a human more than anything else? I'm very cheesy with my questions. I apologize, but I'm curious. If not.
I mean, I don't know if it's changed me as a human so much, but what I will say, I've noticed from some clients, and I've noticed from some writers that, roadmap writers, and then other people that I've been talking to or working with, look, there's going to be a lot of people who want to write about this situation that we're experiencing right now. Like we're no doubt in my mind that a couple months from now, we're going to see a lot of projects out there on the marketplace about coronavirus or being in isolation or military control over, like all sorts of things like that. No question that that's going to be a part of it. But I think for those, because there are a lot of writers with us right now that are listening to this, and I'm sure even more that will listen along the way. What I'd encourage you all to think about, though, if you're coming up with concepts in this sort of space, is just a couple of things. One, maybe consider not making everything all doom and gloom, right? Because we will, like, coming out of this or even being in this, I think a lot of executives, because I've been hearing this along the way too, the past in the past like year or so, a lot of people are wanting to move away from like very nihilistic kind of takes on life and, you know, very like harsh sort of endings to things, you know, so maybe some sense of hope to whatever kind of story you're dealing with. And then the other thing I would recommend, if you're looking into like concepts that are based on what we're kind of dealing with right now, is maybe think too, like, look, since so many people are going to be thinking about this, quite a few of the same exact ideas are going to be presented in a lot of these scripts that come out. So one of the ways you can distinguish yourself is don't go with the first and most obvious sort of idea that pops into your head about how you can comment on what we're living through right now. Maybe look a little deeper into, okay, you could make a show about what it's like to be under quarantine. But maybe you could also create a show. Maybe there's another way you can talk about some of these themes and concepts and ideas that come with kind of feeling isolated, or come with feeling like some of these feelings that we're having to work through and deal with right now. Instead of dealing with like the pure obvious surface level kind of take on the subject matter, maybe look a little deeper into like the themes, like the more human universal experience that we're all kind of living through right now. And there are lots of things that will kind of spiral out of that will just come, you know, will become a little bit more obvious over time as we learn. Because like right now, a lot of us are probably going through a number of different stages of grief for our social lives, you know? So right now we may have one particular kind of vantage point on it, but a couple weeks from now, when we can reflect on these things, it's going to be a little different.
Yeah. I don't understand how everybody's watching Contagion now. I'm like, I want to watch all the comedies in the world. Get me Clueless. Get me all those movies. I
know how they survived.
Yes, I guess. But yeah, for any other thoughts about that, like in terms of like submissions, just, I guess speaking maybe even more general, like when there's a major movement, whether it's you know, gay marriage or the Trump administration or the Me Too movement, does it, I know this is very different, but do you feel like there's like an influx of submissions and comps that use that as a crutch? Do you like that, or do you feel like it's too much in the zeitgeist?
I feel that. I feel that, like what Chris was saying, but kind of to also dovetail off what you said, Joey, it's like, do the trapped inside comedy version, do something that is about it, whether it's wholesome or it's funny or it's comedy or you go broad, but maybe it's something to alleviate the pressure of it and laugh at the situation because we're all crying, or we did, or we do, or we're frustrated. I think the talking about your social lives dying is sort of the bad, you know, the terrible feeling. But it's also just like when you're walking down the street, this trepidation or something. But what's funny about that? What could be the human, you know, the human element that you go off on a tangent in a way that could be the alternate
I love that
entertainment to it.
So it provides escapism, but it's still relevant to today. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Shep and Dan, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So I would say this, if a client of mine wanted to tackle coronavirus as a theme, I'd really push them hard to think outside the box. My natural inclination would be, I have no desire to work on that while we're living that. But if they had some outside the box, very character-driven, heartwarming, funny, you know, just not dark, I think that kind of speaks to what's maybe a little bit more appetizing in the market right now. Things that kind of fall into like family action comedy space, I think are probably a little bit more positive, uplifting, evoke the right emotional response. You know, there's always going to be an appetite for many different types of projects, but I think if you're looking for some kind of an edge, some kind of an advantage, really reading into what's playing in the marketplace, I think leaning into that space might be advantageous. But I would say this, don't chase trends. You know, if it's not your wheelhouse, if it's not what you can write well, don't do it. It's probably not going to be anything that really helps your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On my end, you know, I'm a lawyer. What do I know about what sells? I just know how to sell. Couldn't tell you what sells, but I do recognize that there's an interesting opportunity at this moment in a world in which you can't get movies insured, as Chris, I think, was talking about, and in which You can't go outside and have a production with a full set of people. How do you produce a movie, whether it's joyful and funny and romantic, or it's, you know, Contagion or whatever? How do you produce a movie or write something for our times? Is it room the comedy? I mean, I don't know what it is, but that's for the creative people to figure out how to do.
Yeah, I know, and Shep and I were talking about this the other day, about like how do you keep your creative juices going in terms of like producing something. Like maybe you produce something via Zoom, in a horrific take, and I will never watch this movie. There's a movie called Unfriended that takes place all on Skype, I believe, and it's a group Skype, and nobody ever leaves Skype, what I gather from the comic attractions. But I feel like there is kind of a way to keep producing in this time. And in kind of in segueing into that, do you feel like with people now getting more used to Netflix and maybe getting even more comfortable not leaving the house, do you feel like this is going to have a longer impact in terms of theaters?
I do, and I was thinking that just the other day when I was seeing that so many films that you were just thinking we're going to go into the theaters are now, you can catch them, like that Vin Diesel movie,
Yeah.
which would almost be this guilty pleasure that I shouldn't admit on live TV here. But, you know, it's like, it's going to come to, you know, streaming. Or there was the one that that is The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
That's as well. And so it's like, damn, that's easy. I may not have wanted to go spend my money to go to the theater, but it's there. I'll spend the money to do that. So I do feel that it will change things. I still think there's the purists for sure, but I do feel it's just going to be all too easy for us to not only leave the couch, you know, for entertainment.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely going to change distribution models in a lot of ways, and a lot of things that were kind of teetering on the brink of collapse anyway are probably going to, you know, go the way of the dinosaur, you know. But something that we can all keep in mind with this is that what all of you writers are doing is not going to go out of demand. There will be different formats that we're exploring things in, as we've been talking about, but the act of storytelling, which is what all of you are talented at, all of you are pursuing, you know, that's never going to go away. Like that will never go away, right? Like you guys have a skill set that no matter what happens to us, like we're the ones who are going to be hurt a little bit more, I think, by this sort of thing when things are changing. Those of us who are kind of locked into this system of like, you know, helping writers get their projects into this sort of, you know, form that we've been used to dealing with for decades. But the very act of like storytelling is going to exist in so many different formats, will not go away. Podcasts will probably take off in even more, to an even greater degree than what they were already on. You know, I do think we're going to see less, like giant film production is going to be really hard to do for quite some time. But I think that, you know, look at how they produced the Mandalorian as a series, and how they did that basically on a soundstage that would have an LED screen kind of projecting the set all around them. And it could look like you were moving from one location to the next without picking anyone up and going somewhere. So in a near distant future where we're probably, you know, if we want to get movies produced within like the next year, I've heard producers talk about this, where they're assuming that once a production starts, people will probably have to stay quarantined within a particular physical location for a production. Like, how do you do that and move from all sorts of different, you know, to all sorts of different locations? You might want to be thinking about single location places, or things that are or single location movies, or things that are kind of like a little bit more contained, you know, which is what I think all emerging writers should be doing anyway to really break through. But sorry, I'm getting tangential a little bit. There's just so many things that are going on right now that like you could go on and on about all of this, I think, you know?
Two quick things. One is if everybody wants to start typing in their Q&A box. Some of you already cheated, and I see 8 questions in there already. But if you want to start typing in questions, you can. Somebody says, I think it's cool that Chris Deckard is speaking from the Batcave, and I totally agree. It's not. It's a fake backdrop, by the way. It's not a real tree. And I'm actually curious, Shep, on your end, talking about like different platforms. Do you feel like you're getting more contracts or for new platforms like Quibi? Do you see the trend shifting on your side?
If you're talking about post coronavirus, it's a little too soon for that, but our clients have always ended up kind of riding that curve. Yes. So we've been doing Quibi deals for years. We've been doing podcasting deals for years, AR, VR, all sorts of stuff like that, story file deals. And I think that I'm not sure if it was Chris or Dan who made this point, Janet, but it is all about storytelling, and these are just different modalities of storytelling, and everybody wants to see and explore new ways of doing it, and explore the way you tell stories given these differing constraints. Mm-hmm. It's something I can relate to. Before I was a lawyer, I was a musician. I still write songs to this day, and every song is a story. I couldn't write a script, but it's the same principle. You have to find a way to tell a story with your songs, and I'm constrained by the format of the type of song that I'm writing.
I love that the Rosenmans, you and Howard, have such a layered, interesting life. When I talk to Howard, he's like, I was an astronaut, and I'm like, who are you? It's so awesome. I love it. Okay, last question, then we're going to go into the Q&A from you all. One question, then just kind of a recap so far, is like, so you're saying Quibi, story file, which I've never even heard of before. From anybody else, what other kind of unique platforms or unique ways for writers to get out there do you see coming up? Podcasts, somebody mentioned. I'm curious.
I was just thinking about Quibi, that it launches soon, and it's sort of the most strange, perfect timing.
It really is.
Anyway, sorry, that's just
I think the counter to that, I don't think Quibi will do well.
No, I'm just saying that the launch is sort of almost has this strange captive audience in a way that if it had a blip of a chance, it could. But no, I have a lot of reservations. I agree with you, Dan. I totally do. But it's just a weird launch. It's sort of like a right timing, but then we'll see how it does.
This is probably going to sound really crazy and maybe make some people want to like barf, but if you're working in the comedy space, I mean, you should be paying attention to how the next generation is consuming content on things like TikTok. I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear or think about, that it's like, 15 seconds to like a minute of storytelling, even shorter than like a Quibi. But I mean, that's how all these younger up and coming generations are, that's how their expectation of content is being formed. You know, they're not sitting around watching half-hour television shows or even 15-minute like bite-sized episodes. Should really be paying attention to that, because there is actually storytelling taking place on a lot of those videos on TikTok that tend to, rise to the top. A lot of it's nonsense dancing, but that will serve its place. But there is some interesting and unique storytelling that I think is going to rise out of that as well. Just to be aware of, we should always be on top of these things. So.
I love that. Oh my God, I feel so old. I'm like, what about MySpace? But I have to learn about TikTok. Okay, so a ton of questions are coming in. Some of the questions are very specific, so I'm going to try to ask the ones that are a little more general that can help everybody. One thing that somebody asked, it was an emailed question that I think is really important. I know, and someone asked this first. I know some writers, and one last question. If you're typing a question into the chat box, because so many people are typing in it, that question is going to get lost in 2 seconds. So make sure you're using the Q&A box. Okay, so I know some writers' rooms have temporarily gone virtual. Do you see virtual writers' rooms being more common in the long term, making it easier for writers who live outside of LA to be on staff? I think that's a great question. Thoughts?
I do. They're gonna, but I do, and I see it even now with international clients. Like even before this, one of my international clients had to go back to their home country, and they were still kind of in and out of this this writer's room that they were on, and started, you know, tuning in via like a video conference thing. And I think this whole trend of doing video conferencing for group kind of projects and things like that is just going to become even more common, because people are going to realize, well, wait, we can invest all this money into having a space that sits here, and, you know, think of all the inefficiency that comes with that. Like you're going to get so much more done for less money over something like this. Like something will be lost along the way for sure, but I would not be surprised if we see more of that happen, because we're already seeing it happening. So
I think it makes the rooms more interesting.
May I jump in here?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan.
Well, it's this.
So
like,
from my end, I think this.
No, Shep, you go first, and then Dan.
You go, Dan.
We'll go Shep and then Dan.
All right, so I think that the studios are going to love the virtual writers room because they save on real estate, and you probably need fewer assistants or a different type of assistants that will allow them to save some money. But I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a function of the showrunner or the particular show, maybe could be, and what they need. There are just some people who can't organize unless they're in a room with other people. And it may be, you know, once a week meetings at co-working spaces, who knows? But I think that there are some really interesting opportunities there.
Yeah.
I don't see it going entirely virtual, but I do think it opens up the opportunity for some writers who maybe don't have the means or ability to be in LA or be in New York to be put into the mix for particular shows. You know, it may be on a case-by-case basis based on the showrunner and kind of the vision for the room and the project. But I do think some people will start to think outside the box and say, okay, we're still going to get the same level of output, maybe even better. And it maybe affords us the opportunity to bring in new and different and interesting people that we probably wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
Yeah. I'm curious, Janet, I mean, maybe not Roswell in particular, but like setting up a writer's room before, what are your feelings about it? Do you feel like it's going to hurt the integrity, or do you think it makes sense?
Well, I think as everyone else has hit upon, I think there's purists that will want to be in the room, and they feel that being in the presence of each other just naturally has a different cadence than being online. But I think with something like Roswell, right now that's how they're working, and it seems to be going very, very well. I think it's because they've embraced it. There isn't any other choice. Maybe that's first and foremost what it is. But secondly, I just think that they are, you know, wanting to work and wanting to do it, so they're making it work. But I think it does have its pros and cons. I do see as perhaps costs and also the availability of people. It will certainly, a virtual room will not be unheard of. Maybe not all the time, but a good chunk of the time. I do just feel it could open up our doors to a lot of opportunities for writers in different places at different times.
Yeah, I love that. I was reading the other day that Zoom, what we're using now, got 600,000 new clients in the past week. 600,000, wow. Which makes sense because that's what everybody's using. But I do feel like once you get it, and once you experience how easy it is not to leave your house and still get work done, it's like, why would we go back? Why would I drive in traffic an hour each way? So yeah. Okay. So this is another really good question from Evan. I'm a rep writer, and for this question doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're repped or not. But basically, her question, or Evan's question is, if you had a lot of general meetings and you felt like you were getting momentum, and all of a sudden all your general meetings were canceled because of what's going on now, how do you feel you could keep on getting momentum at this time where nobody's meeting in person? Like, what would you tell your client? Would you tell them, just focus on your development right now? Or, well, I guess it's a little different because you would kind of orchestrate the meeting, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on this, and I'll use an example. I had a couple of clients, like I'll say in general, April tends to be end of March and into April tends to be a pretty busy time for me and my international clients coming over here to do meetings because we're out of pilot season. A lot of people are reading and meeting during these times. I usually get a lot of people who, this is like prime time for in-person meetings. And I had a client who was in town on a number of meetings when we started shutting off, like planes being able to leave or people being able to come in and out of the country. And this client had to stop all the meetings and like hightail it back home before things really shut down. I have another client who, after 3 years of working very diligently on this very ambitious short film, it was going to premiere at Tribeca in competition, and Tribeca cancels, right? And so all these meetings that they were going to go on before, like in the week before that, what are we going to do? They can't come over here now. And I had another client that we've been waiting for years to have come over here to do a round of meetings. And we've been building up all this great momentum and getting people, and I'm saying like, because to set up these types of meetings, we're like months in advance, like getting people to read things, getting people to watch things so that there's a huge demand once they're here to, get in front of people. And now it's like, what are we going to do? So I feel like we're in that situation with a number of clients, but what I'm telling clients and what I would tell any writer too, is that if you could have gotten momentum before this happened, you're going to be able to get momentum after this kind of blows over. Because what this is telling me is that, like, for my clients, I'm very confident in my clients' work. And I'm confident that if I can get someone to read something of theirs and they're going to fall in love with it and want to meet in the first place, they're going to want to do it in a couple months from now too. I think sometimes people get a little too wrapped up in like this heat of the moment thing where we've just got to hit while the iron is hot so much and it's never ever going to be hot again. That's nonsense. That sort of like time pressure is often used to manipulate people sometimes. Like, you got to do it now or else it's never ever going to come back. That's not how it works. I personally don't think so. I think if you've got the talent and you've shown that you can get people interested, it will happen again. And so any momentum that any writer may feel like they have gotten up to the point where things started shutting down, that momentum can be regenerated. That sort of heat, that fire can be rebuilt again. And now is the time, not to worry about, well, what have I lost, but to think forward to the future. How do we get even more people to want to be interested once things start to, open back up again? And I think, what a lot of us are able to say now is like, look at all this momentum they had before the coronavirus. You want to be one of the first people to meet them once things open up again. I don't know. I think there's still a lot that can be done.
What, anybody else have thoughts on that? Dan?
Yeah, I'll jump in. We had a promising writer-director client sit down at many of the agencies before this all went down. She has the opportunity to sign at a major agency, and I'm not sure what to do, to be totally honest. And I think this is something that we're kind of wrapping our head around, in the sense that, okay, she could sign somewhere and they don't do anything for her for 6 months or whatever, and then they just drop her. Or we wait, have her do something else, and then kind of revisit that conversation. So that's definitely something that we've been thinking about. Her in particular, she has a bunch of meetings that she's supposed to have over the course of the next couple months. People are very eager to sit down with her. And I think it's really weighing out, like, who do you want to wait to meet in person versus who would you really like to meet now? Someone that maybe might have something for her, either to be thinking about going forward. So maybe that looks like a Zoom conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I'm the kind of person that prefers to personally meet people in real life. So I don't know if I let my own personal preferences kind of factor into that, but it's definitely something that Gavin and I are talking through and really considering. I'd say this, like, I'm kind of wondering what I do if a client has a really great spec. At this point, like, I don't know if I would take something out immediately, I really want to see how everything starts to shake out, but it'll get to a point where maybe taking out a new script is appropriate. I definitely made a couple submissions today for open writing assignments, but those were presented to me rather than me really seeking it out. So like, I think I'm okay there. So I would say this, like, just to be brutally honest, it's a fluid situation. Things are changing maybe every hour. I don't know if I have all the answers at this point for myself, for my clients, for everyone on here. But I think we're just trying to approach it with a level-headed attitude, positivity, and just confidence that things will get better eventually.
And I guess, like, you know, think from the rep side, Janet, if you got a submission from a manager or agent for you guys to consider, like, actually producing it, do you feel like you personally think now is a good time? Would you not think twice about it? It's just another submission. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, if I like it, certainly I have had that. Last week I got something after I had just a phone conversation with someone that I will pass up the food chain to my next level, which is the only level for a TV project. And we'll see. It could just lead to a phone call of, God, we really like it. Let's talk, have a phone call with the writers, see if there's, you know, some sort of a good connection made there. It does sort of almost stop there at the moment, just because we're not sure what the networks are doing. I think what Dan said is like, who knows what's going to happen next? We don't know what the next could be. But I think also for my two guys, Kevin and Lawrence, for Lawrence, this is like the perfect opportunity because he's been so focused on this film, or Kevin with TV. We've all just sort of been scattered. So it's actually, I've got captive audiences. So for me, it's actually a really good time. And since it's only the three of us, it's a very short food chain. You know, it's sort of, if I like it, it goes one way or another. And I've got them looking for that to do and to read.
I love that. And Shep, I know you did some research yesterday, so if it's too soon for you to really kind of digest and really kind of convey what you researched, and again, if anybody wants the handout that Shep put together, he has some really amazing links that will really help you all out in terms of this film fund that Netflix put together, just some other links. But I'm curious, from what you researched recently and everything that's going on, anything that you feel like writers now should know from a legal perspective, maybe not from a legal perspective, but in terms of benefits, new film funds coming up to help people, just anything you feel you want to share?
So it's a very broad question, and there's no one answer because it's not one size fits all. It depends on a whole lot of factors. Is the writer an independent contractor? Are they a member of the guild or not? Are they on an existing show? What does the contract for that show say? How are they treating all the writers on that show? Or is it a feature film? And what's the relationship between the writer's contract and all the other personnel on the contract? So there are many, many factors. But the bottom line is, in this very scary time, my first advice to people is to reach out to other people, right? Talk to people, get what information you can. Even if you get no information, the act of just connecting with another human being is valuable in and of itself. But there is, in fact, a ton of information out there. You know, the easy answer is, if you are in a kind of full-time salaried type job, like any other job, if you've been laid off, your hours have been reduced or temporarily suspended, you might be eligible for unemployment insurance. There might be some kind of disability insurance available if, God forbid, you're sick. Your employer, whoever they may be, may have a whole benefits package that you're not considering, or that HR hasn't quite gotten to you yet to talk about. It depends how big the company is. But you know, there's sick leave that you might have accessible to get you some money. There's disability packages, whether it's the Family Leave Act or something else. There are a whole host of opportunities. Talk to people, reach out to, look, all of us presenters are participating in this. because we're doing a community service to answer questions for people, to give out information. And there are going to be people you can reach out to in the HR world, among lawyers, who will just be generous with their time, because everybody's scared and nobody knows what's coming down the pike. So, and I would kind of end on advice that I learned from my wife. Expect the worst, but hope for the best. All right, so plan for the worst, but it doesn't mean that, you know, great stuff isn't ahead of us.
That's literally every time I go on a plane. I'm like, this is it. Come on. Leading to crying and screaming. Also, I just put Shep Rosenman's email in the chat box. So if you want to email him after this, feel free. Last thing I'll say about this, you know, this maybe topic, and we'll move on to a couple other questions, is that I've been doing this. Roadmap's been around for 4 years. I've been doing stuff like this for somebody said this yesterday. I was like, oh my God, for 10 years, all online. So and plenty of writers have been signed, staffed, hired, produced, all virtually, barely meeting people in person. So it is, I think, an interesting wave. But for me, I know Chris or somebody was joking about that you barely leave your house because you work from home. That this feels kind of, maybe not barely leave your house, but you know what I mean. That you don't go out, that you work from home. So this is kind of like not weird for you. For me, this is not weird. For me, it's like, oh, this is just normal. People are meeting online, virtual, you know, Skype meetings, setting up Zoom meetings. It's kind of like the norm for Roadmap. So it's interesting to kind of see people being like, oh, this is the new norm. I'm like, no, this is pretty normal. So, I mean, to any writer who's like stressing out that like, you know, who's going to meet me, everything stopped. Hopefully by this point, that's kind of diminished some of those fears, because it's not true. Things are still moving forward. People are still meeting people and reading almost more than ever. Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions. I'm trying to find ones that aren't, we haven't really touched upon before. Let's see. I guess this is from John. This goes a little bit beyond even writing, but just production. Do you have any advice for finding the next job given the current situation, especially for people working in different fields like post-production? That I do not have an answer to, because that's outside my realm.
Stay in contact with people. Like, can I share this with everybody too? Is in this industry, like for those of us who have worked out in Hollywood long enough, actually in LA doing this, many people that we know have been out of work like pretty consistently over and over. It's like a musical chairs of people, like, you know, they'll be at a company and then they'll be between jobs for a couple months. Or I've seen people sometimes be without a job for a year and then find their way back into a great job, and they're doing fantastically now, you know? And I think whenever I see people who are laid off or out of work for anything, I encourage them, like, what they should be doing is meeting people, getting to know people, staying in touch with people. Something I think Shep had brought this up a little bit earlier is, you know, reach out to people, stay in contact with people. This is not the time to kind of tuck yourself into a shell. It may feel like that, and that we have to do some of that given these lockdowns in a lot of the big cities. But when you're out of work, you need to be in contact with other people, because that's how you're going to find more work. And it's, you know, I think writer, whether it's you're a writer or an executive, or, you know, working in other aspects of this industry below the line or whatever, post-production, it's all going to come down to your relationships. So if everyone else is kind of freaking out and sitting back and waiting for things to get better, the way that you stand out is by doing the opposite of that, by being the person who is on everybody's minds, who like people are thinking about, because when jobs do come back and openings do come up, you want to be the first person that comes to their mind. Yeah. You don't want someone else to have beaten you to that punch. That's what I would say for anyone who's in this sort of in between jobs kind of situation.
Yeah, it's a great point. I would just want to echo what Chris said. This is just speaking on the rep side. Every job that I've gotten in the 7 years that I've been in Hollywood is based upon someone putting me up for it. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely jobs that I haven't gotten because I tried to do it myself and I didn't think I needed it. But that's the reality. Because if you're not being put up by someone else, you're going to get beat out by someone that's put up by someone else. So just really, you know, stay in contact with people, really ask, hey, like, ask questions. Have you heard of anything? Really just dig deep in terms of your network. I think that's really the best way to kind of be in the position to get a job when things kind of go back to whatever the new normal is.
Everybody should look at Google the Grapevine Agency. Grapevine Agency. It's they always have tons of job openings. Some of it's like assistants, personal assistants, but they also have like different fields in the industry. So I definitely suggest everybody look at that. And just to echo again what they're saying so far about keeping the relationships going, we did a blog recently with Keegan Shell, who's a manager at Echo Lake, who signed one of her writers, Jess Carson, who just got staffed on The Flash a couple of weeks ago, but it wasn't like signed staffed. It was signed making a ton of relationships, building a rapport, building that network. And when that job opportunity came up, she already had this network of people that really supported her, and that's helped her get signed. And a very specific example, Chris's client, Betty Sullivan, who I adore, she reached out to Stephanie Wilcox, actually, who's a good friend of mine, and Chris just produced a movie with. Stephanie produced a movie of one of his clients, and Betty simply reached out and said, "How are you? Is there anything I could do for you?" And it's those kind, and it came from the heart. It wasn't obviously like some people are kind of obvious, like what their ulterior motive is. But it's like those kind of things that really help you stand out at this time. So just reach out. What can I do for you? It's a new way to reach out and just kind of putting them first. So, that's just something else as well. And Betty's always so good at that. She's so great at putting people first. Any other thoughts about that before we go to the next question? No, okay. Now, this is a question that I love, and I want to hear what everybody has to say about this one, because I do.
Looks on all the panelists' faces when you're saying that.
I know. It's a general question. Okay. Any new go-tos for combating stress/anxiety you've discovered recently? Let's be real. Everybody's anxious. Everybody's stressed. I've had panic attacks more the past 3 days than I've ever had. So what do you do just personally to get over stress and anxiety? Xana?
Well, because I'm a total gardening nerd, and because it finally stopped raining for a little bit in Los Angeles. Yes, it's true. People that don't live in LA, it does rain here. I bought myself a battery operated lawnmower, and I finally used it, and I loved it so much. I'm such a nerd, but I can't wait to that. I'm so happy it's been raining. It'll grow, the grass will grow fast again, and I can use it. I'm so happy about it, because like I love being outside and gardening, and I've got flowers everywhere, and now it's finally, my lawn looks good.
Oh, I love that.
So, and then my 5 pets there, and my husband, who's my 6th pet.
But I love that. So gardening, getting out in nature a little bit.
Yes, it's good, because it's like you're trapped in the house, and you're not supposed to do that. Well, my husband stays inside, I do that. So I'm like very happy to be out there and getting my garden ready and breathing it.
Yeah, I love that.
I have like two thoughts about this that I'll probably go off into a tangent on. So again, pull me back if I go way too far.
like gardening originated. Yeah.
Well, so like think of the basis of the question, right? Like we're all dealing with a lot of anxiety right now, right? And a lot of anxiety and I'm gonna armchair kind of be an armchair psychologist here, but a lot of anxiety comes from overthinking things. Like we can't stop thinking about something. Like we keep checking for updates on, whatever news source we're looking at. It's like, what's happened now? It's like we're constantly overthinking, like, well, what if this happens? What do I do? Like, and I find myself doing that too, right? And I found myself it's very easy to do that in this industry too, because as chaotic as things are right now globally, I don't think I'm exaggerating here for most of us, like especially on the rep side, every day is chaotic. Every day things are rising and falling, things falling apart, things coming back together. So what I've found over the years to do for me, it's like 2 things. And it all goes back to how do we shut off this overthinking, even if it's just temporarily, because you're never going to be able to completely get rid of it unless you like totally zone out or you know, you like go to sleep or something like that. And then your dreams are going to do all the overworking for you. But if you can do something to just at some point during the day, shut off this overactive, like, you know, your prefrontal cortex, to get really kind of technical here, to get that, you know, to get that overthinking to shut off, even for just like 10, 15 minutes. One way to do it is to meditate. And I know a lot of people will probably think like it's a woo-woo, like meditate type of thing. But really, when I say meditate, just give yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes to just sit there and try not to think about anything. Just actively try not to think about anything and focus on just like one thing. You can focus on a dot on the wall. You can focus on some, you know, some picture, or some people like light a candle and just look at the flame in the candle for just to stop thinking for that short amount of time. And I have seen this work for myself and for other people, where you do that for just a little bit during the day, and it makes it so much easier to shut things off over time. Like when you find yourself overthinking, it's kind of like, you know, like you're working out that mental part of yourself the same way you would like physically work out and get stronger with something. Like it takes some strength to shut that off. The other thing I would say, which I think goes back to like what Janet is talking about, is think about what are the things that you do that you absolutely love. You know, think about those things that you've done in your life that just, when you do them, like your sense of time kind of flies away from you. You know, sometimes people will find that from music. Sometimes people will, I get it a lot from reading, to be honest. You know, like I can get sucked into something and like all kinds of time just flows away from me, and I'm so focused on that one thing. And I imagine most of you here probably get some of that feeling, if not a lot of it, from writing.
Yeah.
So one of the things, crazy enough, that like you all have the benefit of here is focus these anxieties into your writing. Do something. Shut off this overthinking mind that's like worried about all this other stuff you cannot control, and focus on something you can control that's right in front of you. Do something that you love. Maybe gardening. It could be writing. Could be any number of things. But shut off that, you know, that overthinking part of yourself. So sorry, that's probably way too much info there.
No, I love that. I'm also, as you're saying that, talking about gardening, Janet talking about gardening, I just pictured Janet's garden by the end of this to be like Alice in Wonderland, and it's like everything.
I hope so.
Like, over the top.
I hope so. That'd be from your mouth, man.
Yeah.
Vegetables and flowers.
Yeah. Dan, Shep, how do you deal with stress, and how do you get over it?
You go first, Dan.
I try to stick to a routine. So this is my 3rd week of working from home. I've only left my apartment once. I live in downtown LA in an apartment building, so it's kind of risky to go outside. So I have my groceries delivered and things like that. So it's about kind of striving for some sense of normalcy. Making coffee in the morning, getting dressed, showering, trying to work out, lift weights, cooking meals. I actually cleaned out my balcony and like vacuumed it and mopped it and put up like a little like bistro set with table and chairs. And my wife and I like listened to music and drank there over the weekend. So that was nice. Like it felt like things were okay. But if that fails, I definitely microdose medicinal marijuana.
Medicinal, yes. Cool. I love that. Shep?
Look, everybody said great stuff. So I'll try to add something. I'm a big believer in what I call planned spontaneity. So that looks different at different times. So sometimes I will schedule in an hour of free time to just do nothing. And sometimes it's just about making a list. These are the things I'm going to do today, the order in which I'm going to do them, and intentionally choosing some variety around that. But it always includes de-stressors like meditation, and there's some great stuff online about meditation. There are great apps if you're app inclined. And then there's just the simple, take a minute and breathe and focus just on your breathing and nothing else. That clears your mind a little bit. And if you're a gym rat, whether it's hot 8 yoga or Orange Theory or Soul cycle, or they're now doing hot 8 yoga at home, Orange Theory at home. There's all sorts of Facebook Lives for whatever it is that you're interested in doing. So if you need community, that's a way of being connected to the community, whether you're doing the live one or the Memorex, for those who get that reference.
I guess one more point, and Chet, those are all great ideas. Find a balance with social media, find a balance with watching the news.
Yeah.
It's helpful to an extent. It can veer toxic, it can be overwhelming. Obviously stay informed, but just know that maybe there is a tipping point where there is too much. And I think last week I fell into the way too much CNN category. The past couple of days, I've just been a little bit more mindful in terms of how much screen time I have with the news. And maybe I feel a little bit better just not overwhelming myself with, you know, a lot of negativity, a lot of fear and hype and things that are beyond my control.
I love that. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I find myself in those rabbit holes sometimes and my heart starts like racing. Okay, so there's so many questions, but a lot of the questions don't necessarily have to do like what this webinar has to do about. So we'll do another webinar in the near future about like manager-client relationships, IP, and stuff like that. But I really wanted this webinar to really be about what's going on currently in the state of the industry, and not so much about the craft of screenwriting per se or the manager-writer relationship. So we'll do another webinar about that in the near future. But the last thing I want to ask is, and this is kind of maybe another general question, but this is a good way to drive us home, and somebody asked this question too, what is one thing or a couple of things writers could be doing, in your opinion, now? Some of you were saying writing. Some of you were saying, reaching out to execs and just check in. But anything else you feel like writers could be doing now to keep their creative juices going? Shep, we were talking before about maybe creating some kind of short based on a Zoom interaction or something, which I think is really interesting. But any other thoughts come to mind? I mean, that's kind of everything I think one could do at this time. But anything else?
If you don't mind, I'll reframe it. If you're a comedy writer, now's the time to write a drama. If you're a sci-fi writer, now's the time to write a comedy. If you're a long form writer, now's the time to write short form. Write lyrics. Just writing is writing. Find new ways to tell stories so that when you get through this, you have additional skill sets. You never know what is going to be useful to you in some meeting. Or that's going to help you fix something in another script in your normative form.
I love that. That's true. That is really true. Take this time to branch out a little bit and step outside your comfort zone. That's really cool. I didn't even think of that. But yeah, I think it's also like reaching out to people. There's a writer on here named Rosemary Newton. I think Rosemary's on here. She emails me every night since it started to check in on me and be like, okay, what's going on? I'm a vet. This is what I'm seeing on my side of the world. What's going on your side of the world? And it's so sweet and caring. And it's really great to see these people kind of stepping into their humanity and seeing that side of people more and more. I think it's and then you see people who do the opposite and you're like, wow, you're a horrible human being. But for the most part, it's,
can I recommend there too, like in addition to writing outside of your comfort zone, now, like I'm sure there are some writers too who like this would be such a frustrating time to have like writer's block, right? Like let's say you have writer's block, yet you have all this time right in front of you, right? So what do we do about something like that? Well, what I consistently recommend to writers is that they should be reading and they should be watching regularly. They should be reading other people's scripts, not just like, your direct peers, but like look at things that end up on like the end of your blacklist and read things that are outside of your usual comfort zone, just like possibly reading, like writing something outside your comfort zone. If you're seeing something in the, top 10 of last year's blacklist and you look at this log line, you're like, that doesn't feel like my genre or something that I would like, read it. learn from their techniques, see what you could be putting into your own writing. Do the same things watching pilots, you know, not just episodes of like comfort watching episodes of long running series. Go out and do the research on some more of these pilots, get more ideas, see those types of things will shake up, you know, what you're dealing with right now. If you find yourself heading into like a blocked sort of state, you know, same thing, like read, I constantly recommend to writers that they should check out books like Story by Robert McKee, or, you know, The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. Now is the perfect time. If you're having trouble sitting down to write, go and take in some of that great knowledge that keeps working out again and again and again for so many people. Take this time, use it as a gift. You know, this is the time. If you've never had the time to, oh, I'll get to that one day reading that thing or watching that thing, do it now. And, you know, keep expanding your knowledge base. And it will shake loose that sort of feeling that like, I don't know what to write. I've got too much I'm trying to focus on.
Yeah. Know? I love that. And the last thing I'm going to say, and I want to embarrass all four of you right now, and I feel like I'm going to cry as I'm saying this because I'm very emotional in general, but Chris and Dan reached out to me I did not ask them to, about doing this. It was their idea, and it shows how much they care. Janet has been a godsend about meeting people in person over and over. If I email her once a week, I feel like I email her 5 times a week. It's insane. And Chris and Dan too has been so generous with our writers. Shep, who we just met, I guess 6 months ago, has already been so nice to the writers that reached out to him and jumped on a call with them and given them advice. Like, for anybody out there that feels like frustrated or feel like there's such a gap or, you know, whatever, it's like, know that there are beautiful, amazing, generous people out there like these 4 right here. And it's so exciting to see how much they care about writers, how much they care about community and helping you guys grow and grow. So if you're, you know, at this time when there's so much negativity out there, just know like there is positivity as well. And it includes these 4 lovely people who I just can't say enough amazing things about. And at the end of Roadmap, I'm going to count how many times I email you for a day. And I'm going to do a raffle and see who can get closest to that number. It'll probably be in the hundreds. But to you 4, Janet, Dan, Shep, Chris, thank you so much for your wise words. And any writer would be lucky to be with you. So thank you. And also Julianne Wargren is on here, and I just want to let you know I'm using your mug, one of your mugs right now. And yeah, any last words?
No, thank you, Joey. It's all back at you, and each one of the writers, whether I've read them before I met them or I know them from past experience, I've always had such a pleasurable time, and it continues each day. So thank you, Joey.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks to all of you guys, the other 3 panelists as well. It's always wonderful to be on a panel with Dan and Chris, and wonderful to meet you, Shep.
Yay, I love it. We'll try to do a couple more panels throughout the weeks. Well, everybody, thank you so much. I'm sorry about the chaos at the beginning. I really wanted everybody on here. So now we have an upgraded Zoom. So now we could do this again and not worry about any kind of limit. And okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much. And
wait, just one last thing, Jerry, real quick. Like, writing and TV and film, all this stuff matters, obviously. But, you know, for a lot of people, what's going on in the world is a matter of life and death, and not to like scare people or anything like that, but just make sure that that's your priority. Everything is secondary to that. And so this idea of what you can be doing for yourself, I think whatever you can do within what's possible for your own situation to help others, I think that's maybe the best way that you can grow as a human being through this experience, and maybe come out of it with some renewed perspective, regardless of what your situation may be, that there is a lot of reason to feel fortunate and blessed.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That is, yes, I completely agree. And sometimes it's hard to kind of remember that there's other people out there that's dealing with things way more serious than anything about writing or creating or anything. So that's a great way to put things in perspective. Okay, well, now I'm going to cry. So I'm going to hang up. I'm going to end this now, and we'll talk soon. But everybody, thank you so much. and we'll talk
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Guys.
Yeah.